Welcome back to another episode of The Real Deal. Today we remember it is the 24th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on the United States of America, a horrific day in America that most of you listening, or many of you listening, don't even remember because you might not have been born yet. But everybody knows where they were on that day when the Islamist terrorists attacked us. They hijacked planes. They ended up killing about 3,000 people. And it was a horrific event. And it's just like when Pearl Harbor happened, or JFK got shot, or any other major event. You remember where you were. I was at work, and a girl was listening to the radio. And we heard that a plane had hit the Trade Center. So nobody really thought anything about it. We thought a Cessna, a small plane, went off course, hit the Trade Center. We were like, oh, that sucks. I hope everybody's okay. Oh, bummer. And then maybe 15 minutes later, they interrupted the music to tell us that a jet, another jet, had hit the Trade Center. And the center was blown up on fire. And right then and there, we all knew that America was under attack. And that's all it was after that. The whole day, every radio station, because that's all we could listen to. We had to work, so we didn't get to see the TV. There was no social media back then. Cell phones were like a big... We had them, but they weren't like they are now, so it's kind of a rarity to keep in touch with things like that. So it was pretty much going off information from the radio. And, recounting everything, there were 4 planes, and there was 19 men, 19 Islamist terrorists. And I will say it is not Islamophobia. That is exactly what they were. They were Islamic terrorists. And they went on board, and they had box cutters, and they had some knives that they had snuck on board. And they overpowered the people, because most of the people working were women. So they overpowered them. They took over the planes. They went up front, and they said, they had bombs. They probably did. We don't know. But judging from the explosions of the planes and the towers, maybe. They were Al-Qaeda, and that was a terrorist group like Hamas and most of these other groups. They all have a fancy name and stuff. There was 19 of them. 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia. 2 of them were from the United Arab Emirates. 1 was from Lebanon, and 1 was from Egypt. The trade centers, buildings, 2 planes hit them. And another plane was hijacked, and that hit the Pentagon. Another plane, the 4th plane, hijacked. That ended up going into a field in Pennsylvania. The people on that plane fought back. The last words anybody heard from those people was, "Let's roll." Many people that day had called friends and family crying, and they knew what was going to happen. The terrorists had talked to the air traffic control centers and stuff, and you could hear them on there because they really didn't know what they were doing. They would leave the radio on, whether they did it on purpose or not, but they would tell people what to do and tell them, we have a bomb here, just keep quiet and do what we do. They tell the air traffic controllers we're flying back to the airport, but they weren't. Their intentions were evil, and everybody knows it. The one crashed in a field in western Pennsylvania, and that had the passengers and the crew. They fought back. They tried to stop everything, but it didn't work. Horrible what happened. We all know what happened. We try not to reflect on it, but then again, we have to remember this stuff so it never happens again. All right? The TSA has really cracked down on everything. I mean, they really, really cracked down on when you go on an airplane now. And I understand. There's been a lot of crazy Islamic terrorists over the years. The shoe bomber. There's all kinds of people that sneak things on and try to destroy things in the so-called name of Allah. Now, These guys that did this, the 19 men, they know who they were. They know who they were, and most of them were not in the United States very long at all. They were reported before this happened. This is all the truth, the real deal, where I always bring you 100% truth. They were reported before this happened. They had visas and things like that. Many of them went into San Diego, California. Some were out of Florida. The 4 pilots were trained, and the rest of the guys came along. They were the so-called strong men that overpowered people with the box cutters and stuff. But they were trained by this guy who's still flying today. He's still flying airplanes over in the Middle East, and he's a very proud supporter of terrorism. Very, very pro-Palestine guy. Very proud of it. And that seems to be okay for a lot of people, although I totally disagree with it. I think he should have been charged because he knew what they were doing. That's why he's in the Middle East. He'll never come back to America. Most of these guys were not here very long. And it was reported that a lot of these guys had illegal visas that had expired. They were only in America. Some of them were here for like maybe a year. They came in the year 2000. Some of them came in right before this all went down. So the FBI, I give the FBI a lot of credit because they put the warning out for some of these pilots. And the guy's name was Robert Wright Jr. And he went out there and said, hey, man, these guys are freaking terrorists. And he told the NSA and he told the CIA all about this. And he said, y'all need to do something about this. These guys are crazy. We need to watch these guys. And they all dropped the ball like, no, they're fine. No big deal. We got more important things to worry about. So, and you see what happened. Now, if the NSA and CIA, who do so much around the world and in America, technically the CIA is not allowed to deal in America with American things, but they do anyway. They set this country up for bad things all the time, you know, and if they had done their jobs, this never would have happened. If they had listened to the FBI, this never would have freaking happened. It might have happened later on down the line, but I highly doubt it. And the plane in Pennsylvania, they figure, was going to be going to the White House. So, and it was just a horrific, everything was just horrible. Now, I know a lot of you might not remember this, but the day before, it was September 10th, 2010, they had announced at the Pentagon that there were trillions of dollars that had come up missing. They couldn't find it. Where'd it go? They made this announcement. Then what happened? The next day, the planes hit. And this is where the conspiracies started coming in. The first conspiracy was, well, when this first happened, the government said right away it was Al-Qaeda, which it was, but they said Osama bin Laden was behind the whole thing. So they were already painting the picture of him doing everything. I personally felt there was more to it. I still will talk about that. Now, this is part one of a few podcast series, so please tune in to my other ones to hear the rest of what I've got to say, because I'm going to educate you, and I'm going to open your mind, and I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you a lot of truth, not just conspiracy theories. I'm going to tell you some truth. Now, the conspiracy theories came right away. The first thing I heard was the Jews did it. Mossad did it. Israel did it. And I'm like, that's dumb. But people blame the Jews for everything. The Charlie Kirk shooting, right away people were blaming Mossad. There's people I was talking to today. Mossad did it to shut them up. I'm like, what? Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But the owner of the building was Jewish. And he had raised his insurance policies on it. And, of course, he's going to cash in when the building collapses and everything. But that was the thing they said. Well, he knew what was going on. That's why he raised that up. No, it was just a mere coincidence because he's already a billionaire. So I think a few more millions of dollars is not going to like push them to the edge, you know? I mean, they're already rich. Now, there were 5 Jews on a truck. A woman called them in and said that they were filming it, they were celebrating, and all this other crap. So it turns out the police went and got them and arrested them. These guys were held for 71 days. They were here on visas, all legally. They were all from Israel. And right away the conspiracies were going around, you know, saying that they did it, they were in on it, they were filming it, they were Mossad. What it was is these guys, the reason they were on that van is they worked for a moving company that was owned by an Israeli company. I don't know if you guys know much about this, but in New York City, that's where the largest populations of Jews are in the United States of America. Okay? There's more there than anywhere else except in Israel. So, of course, there's going to be Jewish people there. There's going to be Israel people there. Give me a freaking break. But they called them in. They investigated it and tried to prove that they were Mossad and everything else, held them for a long time. And nothing was ever proved because they didn't do anything wrong. They came to the conclusion that these guys did nothing wrong. They were there working. They saw it and were basically walking around the van like holding their heads like in exclamation, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's going on, you know. And that was called in by a lady who was racist, obviously. So that's where it all started. All the conspiracy theories started coming in. George W. Bush was down in Florida at a school, and everybody started saying he knew about it. He knew this. He knew that. And it just went on. And I'm going to touch on this in the next podcast. Pay attention, please, and tune in. Now, about 3,000 people died that day. And that's what matters the most, is these people died needlessly for nothing. And it's horrific. And many of them were policemen, firemen, people on the plane, and of course all 19 terrorists died. I have no problem with that. I'm glad they died. I just wish they had died in a different way and didn't kill all those other people with them. This basically started wars. And that's where other conspiracies theory comes up. Like I said, tune into the podcast in the future. Probably have another one up tomorrow. I'm going to continue this for a while. But the Afghan War was started October 7th, 2001. Right after this. We went to Iraq in 2003. Went after Saddam Hussein, who was our buddy for a while. And that's how it is with the United States government. It depends on who's kissing your butt at the time. So, and they go after them. And there's so much I'm going to say. Trust me. So please tune into my next podcast. But we went to the war. The Senate voted 98 people voted aye on it. They voted yes. 2 voted not present. 2 people weren't there, actually. In the House of Representatives, 420 people voted yes. 1 person voted no. 10 didn't vote. The 1 person that voted no, her name was Barbara Lee from California. And it wasn't that she didn't want to go to war, because that's what they were voting on. She didn't like the wording of it. She wanted it worded differently. We went to Afghanistan. That war lasted for 20 freaking years. We tested chemical weapons. They tested chemical weapons on our own people over there. They tested drugs on our own soldiers over there. We had over 6,000 people died, Americans died over there. Pretty much half of them were contractors, half of them were soldiers. In the meantime, you know, there was about, well, we don't know for sure, but it's estimated about 4.5 million people in Afghanistan that were killed by us, whether they were military, civilians. They don't know the exact amount. That's a pretty good estimate. I think it's probably higher because we were bombing the crap out of everybody. The Afghan war lasted 20 years. The Iraq war lasted 8 years. A lot of people died, man. A lot of people died for what? When Joe Biden cleared out Afghanistan a couple years ago, what happened? I think it was 2001. Yeah, it was. When he said, this won't be like Vietnam. Oh, it was just like Vietnam. We left billions of dollars worth of weapons and merchandise there. They were flying people out of there in helicopters, just like Vietnam, taking them off the buildings. It was just like Vietnam all over again. Like I said, we left billions of dollars worth of stuff there. Military weapons, vehicles. And what did they do with it? They kept it, and they're using it, and they're selling it to other people. So here's an interesting fact. I'm going to leave you with this fact on this one. This is part one of many more to come. But here's an interesting fact. September 11, 2001. It was just a few years before that, on September 11th, when George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush was president at the time of the 2001 attacks on 9/11. And it was just a few years before that when his dad stated, and it was on September 11th, he gave his New World Order speech. Coincidence? I don't think so. All right, everybody, peace and keep it real.